Okay, wait, now why is, okay. Present startup slideshow. Okay, so let's start. So today we're gonna talk about what is a business plan? And the title of this actually is The Art of Writing a Business Plan. And I'll talk a little bit later about why it's an art. And you may be surprised to see that but you'll understand why in a little bit more as we go. So what is a business plan and why do I need one? And for one thing, if you're planning on starting a business, you do need one, whether you like it or not. And people are often intimidated by the whole concept of writing a business plan. Even the word sounds scary. Business plan. What do I do? Well, the way I'd like to look at it is a business plan is a story. It's plain and simple. And it's not just any story, it's your story. And I underline that because I'm going to emphasize this point a number of times today. You're writing this business plan mostly for you. At least the first time you do it, it should be exclusively for you. It's about you, by you, and for you. And you're going to understand why as we get into this, why it's for you, and how when you write the business plan, you're not going to write it once and set it down. You're going to come back to it many times. You're going to edit it, change it. You might at some point decide that you need to go to a bank for a loan and they're going to say, oh, you have a business plan. Yes, I do. Well, you probably will not hand them the business plan that you wrote for yourself exactly. You're going to want to modify it a little bit. And we're going to talk more about why you do that and how you do that. So business plan, think of it as a story. And like any story, there is structure to it. And we're going to talk about that structure as well. There are also a number of templates that you can use to provide that structure. And I'm going to show you three different templates. People make decisions about which one they use depending on their style of learning and communicating. Some are more pictorial, some are more, sort of more traditional, just very written. And why do you need it? Well, when you apply for a loan or a grant, at some point, if you have investors in a business, they're going to want information from you. But first and foremost, the business plan is to guide you, to help you organize your thoughts about the business and to understand what resources you have available now and what resources do you need to make yourself successful. And one of the most basic questions that has to be answered is my business idea viable? And writing the plan and doing all the work that's required to write a business plan helps answer that question. And we're going to do a little hands-on demonstration about how that might work later on. So what's in a story? Well, they all have something in common, don't they? Every story, there's a plot, there's a beginning, a middle, an end, characters are identified, there's a certain timeline over which the story takes place. And most people who write a book or a story or some piece of writing, there's a message they want to convey. So, but they're told in different ways, just as business plans are delivered and told in different ways. And that depends on the narrator, the audience. It could be related to the type of industry you want to be, you want to start in. Lots of different factors, but the point is there are no two the same. And you, as the author, determine what's in your plan. However, as you're going to see, there are certain things that have to be in that plan. We're going to talk about those, but length is not a requirement. Just going to try to get rid of that banner. Okay. It's all a question of what meets your needs, and you're the one who decides that. I said at the outset that this is an art, and you're wondering perhaps why. Well, no two stories are alike, as people are not. So there's no absolute right or wrong way of writing a business plan. There are different templates. They come in different formats. They look different. One, for example, some of these have become increasingly popular, which is called a one-page business plan, which is not nearly as easy as it sounds. There's another one called a business plan canvas. And I'll show you a little bit about how that works. That in and of itself requires a separate learning session, but if you're interested in it, I can talk to you more about that offline. And then there's just the standard or generic business plan, as I call it, that identifies all the sections that you may want to write about. But no matter which style you select or which template you select, like a good story, the business plan has to convey a readable, sensible message. And what I often encourage people is read your business plan several times and read it from the standpoint of someone who doesn't know you or doesn't know your business. And is what you wrote sensible? Is it educating them? Are they going to now know, after reading your plan, what it is they need to know to understand the business you're in and what you intend to do with that business? The other thing is that regardless of which template you select, even the ones that look easy, like the one pager, which I'm going to show you an example of in a minute, there's no escaping the work behind the scenes that has to take place. So in a business plan, there are several components, and at some level, all of these have to be addressed. Obviously, there's a cover sheet or a title page. The first thing in a written business plan that the reader will see is the executive summary. And oftentimes, I wouldn't say often, I would say the executive summary is the most important part of the plan. The reason being that supposing you submit your plan to a lender and you want to borrow $10,000 and you've met all the requirements, you filled out the application the bank has or the lender has, and they want to see your business plan. Well, your plan, and again, it doesn't have to be excruciatingly long. It can be 4 or 5 pages. But the first thing they're going to see is this executive summary. And you want to be sure that in that one page, certainly no more than a page and a half, 2 pages, very, very most, you want to convey everything that lender needs to know and pique their interest enough so they will say, ah, I get the mission. I understand the business that this person wants to be. They told me very clearly how much they need to borrow and why they think they're going to make money at this and by when. Therefore, I'm going to read further. And they may not read further. They say, okay, John, come on in and talk to us. Tell us more about your business. The point is, you were either going to pique the person's interest enough to continue talking with you, or you could just as easily be sending that person the message that you don't know what you're talking about, and they put your business plan aside and you don't get the help you need. But behind that executive summary are all these other details. And I keep using the word details, but I don't want to say that in all these, for all of these chapters, as to just stay with the story analogy, that you have to write gobs and gobs of stuff. You always want to be concise and to the point. So if you have a business description, let's say I want to make cookies. Well, my business description is to make the biggest and best chocolate chip cookies in Vermont, let's say. And I intend to use 100% natural ingredients, And I don't know, it could be that simple. What is my product and my service? And I put there on the side my niche. And this is a really key aspect of a business plan and going into business. You want your product and services to be clearly identified and separate you from what others are doing. So sticking with this cookie example, there are dozens and dozens of bakeries. So what is my niche as a chocolate chip maker? Well, I'm focusing strictly on chocolate chip cookies. And I've surveyed the market. Yeah, there are other people that make them. You can buy store-bought cookies, but mine are going to be unique because they're going to be the biggest. They're going to have the most numbers of chocolate chips in them, for example. I'm going to identify that niche that I'm pretty sure is different from everyone else out there. No, I'm not making muffins. I'm focused on cookies. I'm not baking cakes. It's cookies. So that's my niche. And then the market analysis and business model. And that is a discussion about what is the industry you're in. Again, I've surveyed the market. I know that, and you can get a lot of market data on your industry just by going online and searching and making sure that you're going to good sources to get demographic information, for example. And you say, well, my market is Chittenden County because I know that the average household income is, I don't know, $50,000 per year. And 60% of those households have disposable income of X. And therefore, they're likely to be able to spend money on chocolate chip cookies. And that's the kind of market, that's what we mean by market analysis. You really want to know what's the space you're entering and where do you fit in. Then there's an operations plan. Big word, but it's really not. And that really forces you to think about, how will I operate? Well, I'm going to be a one-man, one-person cookie baker. I'm going to be working out of my house for the first 2 years. By year 5, I hope to have grown to a sufficient size that I can rent a storefront, for example. And by then I intend to have one part-time employee and one full-time chef. So that's kind of your operations plan. And that's tied to the human capital. For a small business, that's a quick one. The human capital is me. I'm a micro business. Micro businesses are defined as businesses of 5 or fewer people. Well, I'm even smaller. I'm 1. So I don't even need to have that section in my plan. Then there's the financial plan. And we're going to talk a lot more about this later, because this is big or small. The financial plan's probably the second most important part of the business plan, because without a little bit of financial analysis, and that's not as hard as it may sound. Again, that's why you may want to consider using a coach, because we have the tools and experience to guide you through some of those processes and help you understand how to do the analysis that you need to do and how to frame it and picture it. You may want a section on future directions. As I said earlier in the cookie example, well, in 5 years, I intend to be in a storefront. So you want some vision about where you intend to take your business over a period of time. You don't have to say much about it. You may not even know, but it helps you in particular to understand where you might be able to go over a certain period of time. And you don't have to be big. You may say, I intend to be a one-person small business forever. My goal is to make myself enough income to be financially secure. I intend to earn income of $45,000 for the next 5 years. That's fine. You want some risk assessment. That's a really important part, because you just want to make sure that you kind of see what might be coming down the road. Just try to envision what might happen to upset your plans. If it's cookies, what if high, low risk, but what if a huge baker opens next door, or there's a copycat? I mean, it's those kinds of things. Or what if I can't acquire, there's a chocolate strike in Africa where the chocolate comes from, and I can't acquire chocolate chips. Probably all low risk, but you want some assessment of what might happen, and then have some plans around which you can mitigate those risks. And there may be no risk. Well, there's never no risk, but you just want to think about what those might be. Supporting documents, that there are other relevant documents that you may want to include, maybe more financial detail or backup research that you found. You want to just have an appendix that includes some of those. So some of these apply more or less to you. You decide which are the most important, but again, these are the components of a plan that at some level need to be addressed. Are there any questions at this point? Okay. So then, how do I start? No, there's no one way. But I would suggest a really easy way of starting. First of all, you should always write things down, but write down your overarching goals and your vision. Whether it's, I'll stick with the cookie maker analogy again, and you'll understand why a little later. My goal is to be the #1 chocolate chip cookie maker in Vermont, because I have intense interest in making cookies. I love baking, and I think I have skill at it, and I'm gonna take that skill to a new level. Now that's my goal. You then want to go the next step, which is to identify what resources I'm going to need to start, and what skills do I have? Well, my skill is I already know how to bake. Resources, well, I've got a couple of cookie sheets. I've got an oven at my house. I've got the bare minimum to start. Down the road, well, I'll probably need a bigger oven. I've got a small apartment right now. If I'm going to be buying more materials, I'm going to need a place to store stuff. I'm going to need some money I have to make sure I have some money to buy supplies. I probably need a bank account. So you make these kinds of lists. What do you need now and in the future? And then I'm going to set some simple, achievable goals for my first year, and maybe my second year. My first year, I'm not going to get greedy. I want to sell 500 cookies over the course of the year. I have to work on how I'm going to sell those, but right now, that's my goal. I think that's achievable, and I'll show you a little while why I think that is. When you set these goals, you want to be very focused and be realistic. Don't try to overachieve in your first year or two. You want to set goals that are realistic and achievable, and you can achieve them in small steps. And then you want to find a template or business model that works for you. And before you really get too far into this process, you want to do a lot of thinking. And even when you start to write, as I said, you're going to come back many times and rethink, redo. You're going to have new ideas. You're going to change directions, and that's all fine. But ultimately, you're going to want to try to summarize everything on one page. And I'm going to make this point a couple of times today too. as I said, the executive summary is key. Some people come about this in opposite directions. You might write an executive summary or a one-page summary of your business first, and then figure out what all those details are. That's what I would do. Because once you see it on a page, what you hope to achieve, you can then begin to see all the details that you need to work on. Other people come at it the other way. They write out all those details and they'll work on every one of these components first. And then at the end, write their summary. So it's really up to you. But at some point, you will have to do all the detail work. So I want to show you a one-page business plan summary. And this is a real one that a client of mine from a year ago put together. And she kindly has allowed me to use it. And her business plan was for this therapeutic voice-related business called Got This Voice LLC. And she wrote a really nice little statement here about her vision, which is that within the next 3 years, she wants to become known as an artist and facilitator. This centers the creative process, storytelling, and voice work for transformational healing for individuals and for groups, personally and collectively. Her mission, Got This Voice LLC, is created to support people in accessing healing and expressing their authentic voice through somatic, artistic, and therapeutic processes. This transformational work is done in individual sessions, expressive art therapy, groups, and creative processes of production. So two very clear statements. Then the other thing she did that I really like is that she laid out a year ago 6 or 7 objectives that she wanted to attain by the end of this last year. She only is seeing 5 regular clients weekly. She wanted to facilitate 3 8-week courses, facilitate and co-create 3 day-long retreats, perform all in with accompanying workshops at least 3 times a year. I think all in is something that she had written. And she wanted to engage at least 150 people in her work through individual sessions, retreats, performances, online work, and workshops. And she was hoping to generate $25,000 a year in total revenue. I heard from her recently that I did not ask her about each of these objectives, but I do know that she developed a one-person play, and she's going off on tour to deliver it. And she said that she had a lot of good success this year. And by creating these objectives, I think that helped her. Then she laid out what those strategies are over time and what the action plans are. What are the specific work that she needed to do? So she started with this as her one-page plan. Now she did not, other than laying out a few very basic high-level financial goals here, she didn't really get into the specifics about how. But she then went off and then put together a business plan behind all these. So that's one example of a one-page business plan. I'll show you, might be a good time just to detour a minute. I'm going to show you another, I think I have to stop sharing for 1 second. Did we lose some people? Looks like we lost some people. Yeah. We've got Mary here.
It looks like the cameras are off, but folks are still here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, still here.
All right, good. Okay, I want to show you I'm going to share, I'm back to sharing my screen. This is the business model canvas. This is a relatively new way of writing a business plan. I personally am not, this is a really good tool actually to use if you have a team of people to help you. And what this does is it helps you to analyze and update or to create a new business model, but it does it through these 9 building blocks. And they're very similar to the ones that we just talked about. Helps you identify, first focus on who your customers are and who you're serving and which jobs do they really want done. So what are you meeting your customers' needs? The second is what they call a value proposition. What are you offering? What is it that you're going to get done for them? And will they care? So this is one of these, I'm sure, not sure if any of you have heard of value proposition, but this is one of these business school buzzwords that people love to toss around. What's your, just, it's all about what are you about? That's all it is. What are you delivering? What do you do as a business? The next one are channels. These are, how do you sell? How do you reach your customers? And how do your customers and there can be different customer segments depending on your business, and how do they want to be reached? So that involves a lot of analysis too. How do you sell your stuff? Are you going to sell wholesale? Are you going to sell direct? Are you going to be retail? Are you going to be online? Are you going to sell door to door? Are you going to sell flea markets? Are you going to go to local stores? All those things. That's what channels mean. And then customer relationships. That's how are you going to interact with your customers in each of those segments? Are you going to be, is it going to be personal? Are you going to use automation? Are you going to have sales reps, for example? It's, again, this is fairly straightforward. It's how do you interact with your customer? And then your revenue streams. This has to do with your pricing. What will customers pay you? What will they pay you for? And will you be generating your revenue through single transactions, or are you a type of service business where you can generate recurring revenues through service contracts, let's say? And that's a really important revenue source. I have a client who started a computer services business, and that's one of his important revenue streams. He gets people to sign up X dollars per month, and he watches their computer systems, and whether or not there's a problem, they pay him. So that's a really great business model for that kind of business. Key resources. Can't get away from it. What are the key resources that you need to underpin your business model? And then what are the activities that need to be done? And you can see how this picture comes together. Who are your partners? Would your partners be, if I was a cookie maker and I partnered with the muffin maker, or I partnered with an existing bakery shop that doesn't sell chocolate chip cookies, would they allow me to put my cookies in their store? Could I put them in the UVM cafeteria? Who knows? But that's what's meant by partners. I need a bank. That's a partner. And those are the partners and resources that you need to identify. What is the cost structure? And this gets down to some nitty gritty, putting paper to pencil and estimating costs. And you can see how this picture comes together into a single, what they call business model canvas. And for some people, they like this because on one page, when this is all put together, there's a very clear, all this stuff is written in here, summary form under each of these boxes, with the financial stuff being at the bottom. And some people like presenting it that way, and some lenders and venture capitalists in particular, from what I understand, like looking at it this way. So there's a lot to it. This is, it's a really good tool if you have a group of people, you get in a room and you put up stickies on a board and figure all this out. And one example, really simple example, is a little lemonade stand. It's simple lemonade stand. So who are the partners? Well, municipalities. My key activities, making lemonade. I have to do a little marketing. I'm going to be selling. Key resources, my ingredients. My mother's going to be my salesperson. Oh, I need a booth and equipment. My value proposition, nothing more than cold, tasty, natural lemonade on the go. I'm going to have very personal relationships because I'm going to be selling from my booth. My sales channels, very simple. Booth sale, and eventually I'm going to have a website. Who are my customer segments? They're going to be people in the park where I'm going to be set up. My costs, well, I need ingredients, a little equipment. I'm going to make some flyers, and I want to pay myself. My revenue streams are lemonade sales and tips. And it can be that simple. But behind that, as I said, each of these is some detailed work. Okay? And then the other one is the generic business plan. And this is nothing more than a Word document. This is just boring old text, but these are the details that we've talked about before. And what you do is you start a chapter with each of these headings, and you just start writing about it. Nothing more than that. But this document provides you with a little bit of guidance about what goes into each of these sections. So your products and services, introduces, defines, and details the product and service that inspired the information of your business. Includes unique features, niche serve, market comparison, storage of product, production, blah, 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 and on it goes. Same thing with your market. Who is your target market? What are the consumer buying habits of that market? How will your product apply to that market? Why will your customers like it? Consumer reactions, perhaps. What are the market factors and trends? Now, for a lot of small businesses, these things, again, not all of these are relevant, but this is a guide. This helps you figure out what you need to write about and look at. Competition, very key element of writing a business plan. Who else is in the business that I'm in? What is it that they're doing or what are they not doing even? Because that's what they're not doing allows you an opening to slide in there and create your niche. But you also want to know, what are they doing? What are their services and how does their pricing compare? What is their market and niche? What are their strengths and weaknesses? And the other thing about competition, you want to actually get to know your competitors on a very personal basis if you can, because sometimes there are opportunities to partner with competitors. Sometimes you can form agreements with competitors that your product or service can help them round out a missing piece in their product and service portfolio or vice versa. So I'm not going to get into all these pieces, but I just want to share with you a little bit about what's in this document. And if you want copies of this afterwards, let us know. I can email you this copy. I can email you the others as well. But so you just let us know, okay? Okay, so back to the slideshow. Okay, so we talked about different planning models, and now we're going to get into a little more of how do I start. One thing I want to emphasize is, I said this earlier, the first draft of the business plan should be written for you only, because it's going to take time to round it into shape. Write down as much as you possibly can all the time. Don't try to store things in your head. It's really important to write things down, make lists, and the pieces will start to come together. I strongly recommend that for small businesses, micro businesses in particular, it's really important to write the business plan, that the story in the first person. My name is John. I live in Burlington, Vermont, and I'm a cookie maker. I developed a passion for making cookies when I was 5 years old because my mother was a great cook. That kind of thing. You want the personal story to come through in the plan. That means a lot to lenders, particularly when you are, as many of our clients are, tend to be under-resourced. And we have lenders, for example, like Community Capital that's in Barry, that are not traditional banks, that work closely with our clients to help them. They will find a way to try to help them get the financing that they need. And establishing that personal relationship with you or with the client is really important. They really want to know what your passion is and what makes you tick. So keeping the business plan personal is really important. But I do find sometimes that people go a little overboard with that stuff. And you want to make sure you don't lose sight of the business aspects as well. So you want to find balance between the personal aspect of your plan as well as the business details that we're going to talk about in a minute. Think about the plan being your guide. And that's why you want to write things down. It's flexible, it's changeable. It should be updated frequently, particularly as you're writing that first version. Don't let it figuratively be a dust collector. If you have it, probably you're going to be writing, it's going to be an electronic version of some sort. Don't create it, leave it in a folder in your computer and forget about it. Unless you decide you don't want to do the business. But if you're passionate about your business, intent to start it, this plan is going to be your best friend. The financials are very important, but don't be intimidated by them. As I said, I and my capable colleagues are here to help you if you want the help. So one of the important things about starting is really getting to the nuts and bolts of how do I know my idea is viable? And I have been talking about myself as a chocolate chip cookie startup. So we're gonna use that as an example. And therefore, I'm gonna now open up this spreadsheet. Everybody see this spreadsheet, this little table? Oh, I forgot one important slide. It's not really important, but I just want to share with you the cookie scenario, just a little bit of background. So as I said, this is not true. I don't love making chocolate chip cookies. I actually don't. I'm not a baker, but I'm pretending that I do. I love making chocolate chip cookies. My friends tell me they're the best and I should open a business. And I hear this from many folks. They come to me, I love cleaning houses and I do it better than anybody. So I want to go into business cleaning houses. Okay, well, great. How do I do it? What do I know about the business? I think I can sell a lot. And eventually I want to own my own bakery and store, but I don't really know what to do first. But then I think, well, probably what I should figure out is, can I make money at this? I really should do a little bit of assessment because I really want to do this, but I need to understand a little bit better. Is it going to work? And if I'm going to take some risk, is it worth it? So that's the next step we're going to get into, is going back to this little table. Sophia, can people see this? I hope.
I was about to interject. We can only see the lemonade stand as of right now.
Oh, really? Well, I better fix that. let me start again. So you missed the last slide then, did you?
I think so. I wasn't sure if we should
Okay,
be,
so you missed this slide about this
Yes,
chocolate?
now we
Yes.
can see it.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Please speak up if what I'm saying isn't making sense. Okay. All right, so here's so this was just what I was saying, that this was the background. I love making cookies. My friend said I should open a business and so on. And so this was just the lead in to this next sheet, and tell me if you see, can you see the spreadsheet?
we cannot, just the cookie scenario.
Okay, thank you. Why is this not working? Oh, I know why, I think. Okay, can you see it now?
Yes.
All right, good, because this is a really important part. So I've created a little bit of a spreadsheet, and I tried to keep this simple. But one interesting thing you're going to see about this is that in just this little simple cookie scenario, you're going to see that things can get more complicated than you intended to, or you thought they would, fairly quickly. But this simple example, I hope, will be instructive and informative about how you approach kind of a baseline level analysis of your business, because what we're going to do here does apply to almost any business I can think of. Okay, so cookie startup business. We're going to talk about my business planning assumptions, and I underlined assumptions because ultimately that's what a business plan is. You're putting together, you're making a bunch of assumptions about everything. The key is that you can make informed assumptions. They're not wild guesses. That's critical. So what I've done here, I've figured out that for making cookies, these are my key ingredients. I need flour, sugar, butter, milk, chocolate chips, eggs, and I'll need some packaging. I'm going to start with these quantities: 5 pounds of flour, sugar, butter, a gallon of milk, a pound of chocolate chips, and a dozen eggs. And I know from my experience, and I did look this up, by the way, that you can make roughly 30 cookies from a pound of dough. And I'm assuming that these ingredients, based on my experience from working with my mother since my pretend mother since I was 5, I'm pretty sure that these are the ingredients I need. So I'm going to be able to make 30 cookies from a pound of dough. So that means from these 5 pounds, these ingredients, I can make 150 cookies. Well, what do I think I can sell cookies for? Well, I've looked around my local shops and stores, local general stores, and I see other baked goods sitting on countertops, fairly high priced. And I think that $2 per cookie seems to be a fairly reasonable price. So that means that at $2, if you just do the math of dividing the number of cookies by the price, my cost per cookie is going to be 30 cents. And my profit margin is $1.70, which is 85% profit margin. Boy, you think that's pretty good. That seems like pretty good profit. So how does that really translate though to a business? Because I have other costs I have to take into account. And at this point, I'm not sure this is an optimal price. What if I did it $3? What happens? Wow, look at that profit margin. So $1 better than it was. I don't want to get greedy. And what if I have to package these cookies? I know I've seen my competitor, she sells macaroons 3 for $6. So am I going to have to discount if I package them? Well, we'll figure that out later. But for now, we're going to stick with the $2. So what does that mean? So I'm going to show you. I put together this other little spreadsheet where I said, okay, I've laid out here my first 9 months of being in business. And I'm setting myself a goal of generating $500 in sales the first month. Let me see what that will take. So what does that take? That means to generate that kind of revenue, I took the $500 and I divide by the $2 per cookie. That means I have to sell 250 cookies in a month. Boy, that sounds like a lot, but wait a minute. That means if I did that, that should be 5, right? That means I have to do 50 cookies per week. Well, that doesn't seem like much. And if I break, oh, no, that's right. That's 4. That's 4 weeks. My apologies. So that's 63 cookies per week, or 13 cookies a day. Well, that seems pretty reasonable to me. Maybe, okay, I'm just gonna stick with that for now because I don't want to get greedy. I need to have some experience. So my cost of goods sold that month is going to be $75, and which yields me what they call the gross profit. So out of the $500 that I generate, my ingredients cost me $75. I have $425 left over. But I've rent for my storefront that I jumped into, or I'm projecting I want to rent. I haven't done it. I mean, I'm planning, but I think I can afford rent. So it's going to be $500. I have utilities. I have to pay for insurance. I have some startup fees, some miscellaneous supplies. Oh dear, my first month, I lost $925. Well, okay. What happens in month 2? Well, I think I'm going to increase sales to $600. Well, things are a little better, but I'm still losing money. And by month 3, things are going better. I'm now profitable by $30, and I'm now projecting sales of $5,000 by month 9. If I look at what kinds of cookies per day that is, it's 50 per day, 75 per day, and I think, wow, I'm pretty sure I can make 75 cookies per day. That's not going to be a problem. Now, the one big flaw in my plan so far is what? Anybody care to chime in? Well, the flaw is I haven't figured out how I'm going to sell them, where I'm going to sell them. The base numbers seem reasonable. So what this tells me, at least, is that I think my plan is viable. Yeah, I've got more work to do. I've got to figure out where I'm going to sell them. I could even, now what happens if I decided that, I think these are going to be a big demand. What if I charged $3? How does that change things? Oh, okay. No, my model didn't work. I should have. Yeah, I should have increased my revenue number. Okay, never mind. We're going to leave it at $2 for now. All right. So any questions about this? Does what I'm explaining here make sense?
Yes.
Okay, good. And the other important thing here is that setting up a little tool like this is very easy, and it allows you to play what-if games. You can then, you always have to make sure the calculations in your sheet tie together, but you can then change some of your assumptions to say, well, What if I can squeeze out 45 cookies per pound and still sell them for $2? Then your profit margin improves a little bit. But the fundamentals here are fairly sound, that at a fairly low volume of cookies, I have the ability to make them. I think the pricing is reasonable. I'm quite confident of my ingredient costs and my operating costs here. I think over time, look at that, in the first year, even if I lose money in the first 2 months, in the first 9 months, I can generate almost $9,000 in net profit. I'm encouraged, but like I said, the big stumbling block is I have to sell them. So now the other very important aspect about the financials is the actual cash flow. And there's a very important distinction between a profit and loss projection like this one and the cash flow. And I don't want to get into a big accounting difference, but it's important to understand the difference. There are actually 3 important financial tools that any business should be aware of. One is the profit and loss statement, the P&L, which is this. The other is cash flow, which looks at the actual coming and going of real live cash. It's essentially a mirror of your bank account, should be, more or less. And the third is a balance sheet, and we're not getting into the balance sheet today, but that's important for businesses that have inventory. So if you're a manufacturer of something and you buy raw materials, well, even in the cookie case, if I buy a lot of ingredients and they're stored on a back shelf somewhere and I don't use them for several months, those ingredients, even though they're useful to me at some point in time, for every dollar that I've spent on those ingredients that are not being turned into cookies, that's essentially money wasted. So people often lose sight of the inventory sitting in their back rooms or other wasted assets that they purchased. And that's money that could be sitting in your bank account instead. So that's why cash flow, understanding the actual cash flow, is really important. So in my case here, let's look at this real quickly. When I start, I'm going to be able to put in $500 of my own business. I was really lucky. I got a grant of $5,000, so I don't have to pay any interest on it. So on day one, I have $5,500 of total cash available to me, but I'm going to go buy $500 of ingredients. I need a computer. I need to buy some baking equipment. There were some licenses and fees I needed. The landlord wanted $1,000 down on, or he's going to want, I haven't done this yet. He's going to want $1,000 down payment on the rent. I'm going to do a little advertising. So out of that, I'm going to be using $1,550 in cash. So I'm going to start the business on day one with $3,950 in the bank. Okay, well, that sounds pretty good. Let's see what that does for me. So now I'm going to unhide these cells. So here's month one of my business. Starting at $3,950, I generated those $500 of sales. So essentially at that month, I have $4,450 in cash available. I had to spend some on utilities, the insurance, I didn't have to pay rent the first 2 months because I prepaid it. That was lucky. But I did have to pay those fees, and I had to buy supplies and the advertising. So I spent $850 of the cash. So I'm ending the month with $3,600. So good. Month two, I'm going in with $3,600. So notice this. So even though on my P&L, from a paper accounting standpoint, I lost money, my cash flow actually is still positive. And miraculously, right now, the way I have things modeled, I have positive cash flow throughout the business, such that by the end of month 9, I think I could end up with $16,000 positive cash flow. And that's for small business even more important than the profitability. They're linked. They are linked, but they're slightly different. And that's because of the timing of transactions that the P&L looks at that cash flow doesn't. So I don't want to get overly technical. I simply want you to give you some initial awareness of these differences and why they're important to look at. One other thing that I would make clear to you is, if you're the kind of business that sells things on credit, so say you sell a product or a service to another business, and that other business only pays once a month, you will be recognizing revenue here on your P&L, but that's $600. Let's say I sold all these cookies on credit to another store, and they say, "Oh, John, we're going to pay you next month." So in month 2, that $600 is not going to be here. It could be zero. And that changes when you, and that's again why you want a balance sheet, because on the balance sheet, I would be showing a receivable of $600. But that changes the whole situation. And it's another thing that businesses lose sight of. When they sell on credit and they let those accounts receivable go unpaid for months, that will hurt your cash flow significantly. So another important aspect of the planning and operating a business. Okay, so a little bit of a digression, but nonetheless, an important thing to talk about. Okay, so we are into this for an hour already. I think what we'll do is take a break. People need a little bit of a break. Yeah. All right, so why don't we take a 5-minute break? It's 11:06. Well, let's come back at 11:15 and we'll pick it up. All right?
Yeah.
Okay, see you then. What to do. Okay, so just to recap a little bit, I want, before we move on, I'll take any questions if there are any, but I just want to make a couple of points to review what we talked about and that little modeling that we did. On the one hand, that was a very simple example about how to do some core level analysis. And on the other hand, you can see how even the simplest of ideas has some complexity, a lot more than you would think. And that's why building a model that's kind of its lowest level helps you understand what those complexities are and to think about them. So as you may have noticed, I got it down to how many cookies, the number of cookies in the 1 pound. Really important to understand that. The number of cookies that I think I can make in a day and how that translates to, I started looking at it in a year. Well, then you break it down to per day. And then you begin to see, is it a reasonable number or not? Is something you can do or not? And it doesn't matter whether you're baking cookies, cleaning houses, fixing cars, being a carpenter. It's that kind of root analysis, most basic thing that you should do when you start your business. I mean, think about if you're cleaning a house. One thing is, well, gee, you might be a part-time parent and you don't have 40 hours a week to work. Well, and even if you do, you say, all right, I have 40 hours, I have a 40-hour work week. how many houses do I need to clean in that 40 hours that I have available to me to make a livable wage? And you think, okay, well, I need to gross $35 per hour on average. How many houses does that translate to? Oh dear, I'm assuming that every cleaning job is 2 hours. So if that's 40 hours divided by 2, that's 20 cleaning jobs a week. That's 4 a day. Gee, thinking, that's a busy day. That's doable. Yeah, I think I can do that. And then at $40, 40 hours at $35 per hour, that's $1,400 of revenue. Not bad. And so you can see how the pieces fall into place. Now, again, just like my problem with the cookies, I haven't figured out yet is how to sell them. And the same thing with the house cleaning example. Well, where am I going to get those 20 cleaning jobs? And that's why that's how you need to figure out about how to start building the business from the ground up, or how to expand your network. And we're going to talk a little bit more about some of those things now. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again. And you should be seeing that PowerPoint.
Not
We
yet.
don't see. Oh, there it is.
Okay, and I'm going to start here. All right. So lots of other things to think about when you're writing your business plan and as you're running your business. One is always kind of be aware of what the state of the economy is, right? I mean, that can directly affect how your business does. If people are feeling rich and wealthy, they're going to be more likely to pay for a house cleaner or buy $3 cookies and so on. Conversely, there are some businesses that can thrive in a downtime. So you just want to pay attention to those kinds of things. Be aware of the trends and changing tastes of your customers. Think about what might happen, what can happen, and what you'd like to see happen. Even politics can affect your business. There are city ordinances and regulations that can affect the business, never mind statewide regulations. So politics can have an impact. Be sure that you always source your information from quality sources. Here are just a list of a couple of places that I strongly recommend that you go to. The Secretary of State, Vermont Secretary of State, is an excellent resource. Not only do you have to go there to register your business, but there are lots of business planning tools there. Similarly, with the SBA, even the IRS, there are great tools and sources of information. One of the things as a business owner you're going to need to do is at some point file quarterly taxes. And people often ask, well, how do I do that? And rarely do they think about going to irs.gov, because all the forms and tools and information you need is there. You may need an EIN, employee identification number, to open a business bank account. Available for free in a matter of seconds at irs.gov. There's the Vermont SBDC, which is a mentoring service of SBA. IBN, which is International Business Network, I think it stands for. Unfortunately, that one requires a fee, but if you know someone who's a member, they can bring you either as a guest. And if your business is ready, you can present to the IBN forum. And it's a great way of building a network. Vermont Business Magazine, which publishes a weekly, I believe, costs $40 a year. Great resource, great way to make contacts and understand what's going on in the Vermont business world. The Vermont Businesses for Social Responsibility, used to be located where we are at CVOEO. They have great workshops, great networking, particularly if you are a a business that thrives or is based on social responsibility. There's CVOEO and CVOEO micro business development. Please do use us if you'd like. The important thing is to build a network. And that, as I said earlier, can include competitors. The other thing is be sure you're always on top of understanding how your pricing and costs are connected. And there's a lot to pricing. One of the things that people often overlook when they price, particularly when starting up, so many times I hear from startups, well, I don't want to price too high. I think I should be the cheapest, or I shouldn't charge so much. I don't want to gouge customers, that kind of thing. And I think that business owners, small business owners, often lose sight of the value of their time. So you don't want to be the highest priced, because you just don't. That's not good strategy. But you certainly don't want to be the cheapest. Oftentimes, low price is equated with low quality. And once you are connected with that low price, it's hard to get out of that, off that floor. So be careful with that. Also be aware of the time, depending on the type of business you're in. The time you're putting into your business for which you don't get paid or you can't bill somebody. So if you're a carpenter, let's say, you have to go to job sites to do estimates. You're not getting paid for that time, and yet you're putting wear and tear on your truck. That's time that you're not getting paid for doing another job. And in almost any business, there's that dead time. And you want to build that into your cost structure. So when you price, you have your cost of materials, your cost of ingredients. You also want to factor in the cost of your time and make sure that that's somehow built into the pricing, and yet the pricing remains competitive. And don't feel badly about charging a market rate. Also points to why you want to be aware of what your competition's doing so that you know what their pricing is. Okay, so change needs to be managed, and that affects your cash flow, which is the lifeblood, really. Cash flow is the lifeblood of your business. Think of it that way. Okay, so again, just to quickly run through them again, the components of a business plan. We're going to talk a little bit more about these now, but we talked about the cover sheet or title sheet, the executive summary, which really is the most important section, your business description, a description of your products and services, or services, maybe both, understanding your market, what's your plan for running your business day to day, well, what's the human capital that you need other than yourself, perhaps, what's your financial plan? And you oftentimes, as I did with this cookie example, you want to start there. Just do some back of an envelope scratching. It doesn't have to be a spreadsheet, but do some base level analysis and make sure you're using reasonable assumptions. Understand your longer term direction, understand your risks, and accumulate supporting documents as you go. So one of the things, just starting with an overview of the executive summary, when you write a good executive summary, be sure you include what it is you're asking of the reader. If it's a lender, let's say, you're introducing yourself, your business idea, and yet you want to say, the purpose of this business plan is to, or the purpose of writing this is to request $5,000 loan. This business plan will explain how my business will, what that investment will be used for, and how I intend to recoup it and repay the loan within 6 years or something. You get right to the point, but explain it to the reader so that banker or whoever it is looking at it, says, oh, okay, crystal clear. So that's why it's important to know who your audience is. And that's why you will frequently rewrite your business plan to adapt and change to whomever that audience is. And be sure that that executive summary is summarizing all the key points of the plan details. So you want to make sure that, very important to conclude, for example, with, my goal is that within 5 years, I intend to be cash flow positive within 2 years and generate profit of X dollars within 5 years, or something very specific, and to pay back the loan within 3 years, that kind of thing. So you have very specific reference to the financial detail that is in the plan. Be concise, making sure that the best executive summary is 1 page, but in no case should it be ever more than 2. And I think that's too long. Don't forget the business content. It's far easier to write about you, your history, why you love the work you do, the business you're in, how you're going to save the planet. And then you forget to talk about the financial goals, overview of your market, and those kinds of things. Be sure you have a clear conclusion. And to check it all out, not only the executive summary, but the whole plan, as I think I said earlier, put yourself in your reader's place. You have to assume the reader knows nothing about your business and you. And when the reader's done, you want them to have pretty clear understanding of those things, you and your business. Tell them a good story. Okay, and then the business description, really it gets down to the who, what, where, when, and why. You can, these comments really don't pertain to the business description so much, but be sure you, again, concise description of the business. What is it? I'm a mobile bicycle repair shop. Clear description. I will travel throughout Chittenden County in the summer and take my business to Florida in the winter, and I will repair bicycles on the street corner in my van or something. Get to the point. What is it you do? Market analysis. Now, this shouldn't be short shrifted, whether or not how much you write about it in the plan, but from your analysis of your market, very important. You want to know what the state of the market is that you're in. So going back to the cookie business, sure, there are lots of bakers in Burlington. I know that. But I don't think that there's anyone who specializes in freshly baked chocolate chip cookies. So I'm going to do some work around that and make sure that that's true. I'm going to, as I said, I hadn't figured out how I'm going to sell, but that's why I'm going to do some demographic analysis. And here's where you can go online. You can get incredible statistical data about counties, about population, about median and average income, and where those people live. You can go to the City of Burlington website and get lots of information about that. A few years ago, I wrote to the City of Burlington. I was interested in helping somebody analyze traffic on Church Street, and we were able to get hold of their numbers of pedestrian traffic over the previous 5 years. Really helpful information. And you think, wow, I think the number was 3 million people per year walk up and down Church Street. Well, from there you can say, gee, if I get 1% of that population to walk in my door, I can assume that 2% of those, let's say, are going to be customers. And then you can build some you can build some reasonable assumption about how that translates to real business for you. You want to make sure you understand the market need. Some products fit needs better than others. Cookies, people don't need them, but people like them and people are willing to spend money on them. So therefore, I'm going to have the best possible cookie. I'm going to charge as much as I can for it because the people who are going to buy those cookies don't think about the money, which may lead me to try to find a place to sell it where people think less about money. So when they're on vacation, gee, maybe I should set up a food cart on Church Street. $2 or $3 cookie, people aren't going to think twice about it. So that kind of thing. Competition, we've talked about a little bit already. You certainly want to be aware of regulations. Do I need to be licensed? Oh, I'm going to start a acupuncture business. I need to be licensed. Any business that physically touches people needs a license from the Board of Health. Similarly, Board of Health will want to, if you're baking things, making things in a home kitchen, you're required to have a certified kitchen. That may require you to rent out kitchen space from a kitchen that's already certified. Those are the kinds of things. If you're a taxi service, you need to be, and you're going to be running to the airport, you're going to need to be licensed and appropriately certified by the city of Burlington, never mind DMV. So you want to make sure that you know what those regulations are. Sales tax, that's one that frequently gets overlooked. I had a client who did not collect sales tax for things that he sold in Vermont, and for 4 years, and recently received a nice letter from the Department of Taxation saying, oh, you haven't paid your submitted any sales tax for your products. We think you owe $154,000. Well, fortunately, that turned out, they made an assumption. They had having no data, they made a guess, but that certainly got his attention. And we talked to the tax department and got it all resolved. But those are the kinds of things. And by the way, an interesting thing, cookies, again, I recently found out if you sell packaged cookies in Vermont, you don't need to charge sales tax if you sell 3 or more cookies in a package. If you sell 1 cookie at a time, you do. Go figure. So those are the kinds of little odds and ends you want to make sure you know about. And a lot of that, as I said, available at the State of Vermont Secretary of State website. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Here we go. Oh, I didn't talk much about barriers to entry, but yeah, that's, if there are big barriers of entry, you're going to know quick, and you're going to know, gee, no sense of me even trying to get into this business. And it may be there are too many people already in that space. It may be that you just don't have enough time. You've got kids to take care of. You don't have the time that's needed to start. Could be any number of things, but it's related to risks. So just pay attention to those a little bit. Who are the customers I'm after? And this gets to the flaw in my plan. How am I going to reach them? Well, there are different ways of doing it. Building a network is really, really important. You never don't have an opportunity to sell yourself and your product or your service. So you always want to be ready to reach out to people, to connect to people, whether that's having business cards handy, having a brochure about your business ready, walking into competitors or talking to competitors, however it is you want to build a network, always ask people, can you help me? Do you know how I can do this, that, or the other? Oh, you don't? Do you know someone who can help me? And you will be amazed at how your network can grow. You'll also be amazed at how frequently people want to help, competitors included. So don't be afraid to ask for help or for information or for ideas. A little bit of advertising can go a long way. One of the best advertising opportunities around here is Front Porch Forum. There are two ways of accessing Front Porch Forum. One is through the normal day-to-day user, which you don't have to pay for. They ask for donations, but you can open a business Front Porch Forum account. Very inexpensive. I think it's $10 a month. You can select the towns that you want to be seen in. So you can quickly have access to big markets and really target them. You can ask friends on Front Porch Forum who already have accounts to put plugs in for you. So that's a really very useful, inexpensive way. There's 7 days, although they tend to charge for ads, they do offer some parts, sometimes free publication of events. So pay attention to what's in 7 days. They can be a really good friend. Oftentimes, when you're ready and you think you're ready, don't hesitate to reach out to them to do a story on you and your business. They'll do that frequently. Another really useful way of advertising when you're ready is something like WCAX TV's feature, Made in Vermont. Just last night, a client of mine was featured on that show. And I had advised him, I had suggested that he contact them about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And here he is 2 weeks later, and he was on TV. And they did a really nice piece on him. He makes custom-made men's clothing. Month before that, I think, another client I worked with, and that's how I got the idea. She told me that she was going to be featured when she had called him to make them aware of her business. Turns out they're looking to feature local businesses. So when you're ready, that's a way of getting great free publicity. Depending on your service and your products, there are farmers markets, CSAs, I mentioned Front Porch Forum. Find partners they could be competitors where you can fill in each other's gaps in product lines or service lines. And this is just a small list. You can be extremely creative. There are universities around which have great resources that you can tap into. St. Mike's, UVM, Champlain College. City of Burlington has great resources. They have business development tools and departments and websites. It's really endless. And so you're lucky, we're lucky being in a place like Vermont where there's a lot of resources to help people. Okay. The operations plan. We've already talked a little bit about this, but this gets into, again, this is helpful for you to sit down and think about what you need to run your business. Do you need to rent space? Do you need to build space? Can you do it from home? Do you need a food cart? Do you need a food truck? Do you have a car? Do you need a car? What about having a van? Do you need a van? Maybe you need a trailer. What is it that you need? Make that list. What are the costs? What about skills? Do you have all the skills? Do you need to rely on other people? Who are those people? What are the skills? And some of this actually entails doing some self-assessment. You may have a great idea, but yet you may not be fully skilled at your idea. It doesn't mean the idea is bad. It doesn't mean you can't do it. But really do a good self-assessment of what those skills are. You might decide, gee, I love baking cookies, but I don't have the experience. I probably ought to go get a job at a baker for a year or two. I might find out I don't really like baking cookies, but I think I will. And the other thing I'm going to learn when I'm working for somebody else, I'm going to find out how that person runs their business. They don't know I'm thinking about becoming a competitor, but I'm going to learn from them. So you can learn from the inside out, so to speak, and improve your skills. You can start your business and work part-time at somewhere else. So many different ways of doing this. But do that assessment. And it's important also, if you have a job elsewhere, or you have a part-time job, or building this business plan can be a grind to some extent, and it's not always fun. It's hard work, but try to set aside a fixed amount of time or a fixed time of day, every day or every other day, to work on it, and then make sure you're disciplined enough to stick to it. It doesn't have to be all consuming unless you want it to be. It should be fun, but parts of it can be drudgery. No mistake about it. And somewhat discouraging at times too. So plan on that. But again, it's all about the passion you have for it. And then we get to the financial plan again. And this involves, as we talked about a little bit earlier, and I showed you that spreadsheet. No matter how you do it, you don't need spreadsheet. You can do it in a notebook. But building some sort of a realistic sales forecast, making sure you know what your expenses are and budgeting for them. If you're baking at home, gee, my utility costs are going to go up because my oven's going to be going all day. If you're paying for a water bill, geez, I'm going to be using more water. Those kinds of things. I'm going to be putting more miles on my car, so I better make sure my vehicle can be up to it. Just make sure that you know what those expenses are going to be. Try to build up that cash flow statement that looks at the dollars coming in, sources and uses. That's the other name for cash flow statement. What are the sources of all my cash, my own savings, a grant or a loan, my parents are going to help me or a friend's going to help me. Those are my sources of cash. My sales eventually are going to be source of cash. But now where does it all go? Oh, that's right. I got to pay rent every month. I have insurance on the business. I have to make sure that's paid every month. I have this extra utility expense I have to pay every month. Plan it all out. And then along with that, it's the other two important financial statements. Balance sheet. That balance sheet is really, it's not that relevant for every business, but it's helpful to know about. It really is a document that looks at the assets and liabilities of a person. And assets include things like your cash, the inventory that you just bought, the tools and equipment that you bought, things that have value, future value. And if you own land, obviously, or a house, obviously, those are assets. Liabilities, on the other hand, that's the money you owe to the bank. That's the money you owe to your suppliers that you haven't paid. Something you've been invoiced for that you haven't paid. Those are your liabilities. And the reason it's called a balance sheet is because they balance. And there's one line on the liability side that makes those two bottom lines balances called owner's equity. And that's the money That's the intrinsic value that you have put into the business. That's the kind of like the equity that somebody builds in a house when you pay a mortgage over time. That equity, so it's called owner's equity. And that's the value that you have built into the business over time. And then there's the profit and loss statement. And that's simply a periodic accounting of your incoming revenue versus your ongoing expenses. A little trickier than that because there are some accounting rules. If you get to the point where things are falling in place for you and you're starting to grow, I would certainly you can talk to me about some of these things, but I would strongly recommend that you maybe talk to a bookkeeper or an accountant. There are tools that are available like QuickBooks, Quicken. Be careful with some of those. I think people jump into buying QuickBooks too soon, can be expensive. There's far more capability in those tools than small businesses typically need. If you're able to use a spreadsheet, that's really all you need. There are books available on basic accounting. You can take a course, a class, lots of different ways, but you do want a rudimentary understanding of some of these concepts. And business coach, such as I, can help you with some of those. Okay, so if you want to tap into our program at CVOEO, one of the three business coaches, there's Simeon, there's Pacific, and there's me. And there are phone numbers and emails. This is all also available on our website. And that's it. So I'm going to unshare here. Are there any